a short film about our people, European nationals looking for a new place to call home. In the past few years, we have seen unprecedented numbers of attacks on our people, assaults on our women and girls, persecution of our Jewish communities and terror attacks on our streets. The inaction by the European Union and globalists like Merkel, Macron, Rutte and May has led to the indigenous populations of Europe feeling insecure and unsafe. There are people living amongst us who do not wish to integrate but to live their lives in complete separation. Separate schools, separate shopping, separate police, separate laws and the separation of the sexes, where women and girls are treated as second-class citizens, hidden away behind alien clothing and where people do not speak English. Our Western culture, our Judeo-Christian heritage and our way of life is no longer recognisable in our towns and cities. To make this film, we have travelled from Paris, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv and across the UK to tell the story of those who feel so alienated in their own countries they live in fear or are leaving to find a new place to belong. You will hear the truths of rabbis, families, politicians and ordinary young people. This is their story and a sad chronicle of our times.
This is the Britain our grandparents used to know, a place of industry, tight-knit communities, familiar faces, strong families, and a shared sense of British pride. So much so that people came from across the British colonies to join us and to be part of this British success story. But things have changed beyond all recognition.
Welcome to Savilletown in England. This is a little town in West Yorkshire that has a big story to tell. Out of the 4,000 residents here in this town, just 40 of them are white Brits, less than 1%. Since my cameraman and I arrived here, we now represent 5% of our community, and I want to know what happened to diversity here. How does it feel to be the odd one out? And what exactly does this place say about the future of white Britons in the UK?
We need not lose our identity completely. But I'm sure if we are going to make ourselves more acceptable to the society here and have good relations with them, we'll have to readjust ourselves and try to know their point of view as well.
So can I ask you a question? We're asking people what it's like to live in Yorkshire. We went to Savilletown where it's like 97% Muslim. What's going on?
Well, it's been like this for years, hasn't it? Islamification everywhere.
I don't understand what happens though, whether we all just clear out. Is that what the plan is?
Well, it looks that way, doesn't it? They try and beat you down with that all the time, far right, you know, and it's not the case. I mean, like people like me, just working class English people, you just feel like a second-class citizen.
Savilletown's different.
Area for a white person.
Savilletown is a no-go area.
It's a no-go area for a white person. Honestly, it really is. So I
just don't go.
Just don't go anywhere near Savilletown.
It seems ideas of integration are also a thing of the past, and the future is not on the side of white Brits.
Here in Savilletown, births to Muslim parents easily outnumber any other, but you know, Savilletown isn't an anomaly. It's true of the UK as a whole too. In the London borough of Tower Hamlets, 62% of children are Muslims, and in fact by 2035, Muslim births will outnumber births to any other religion. We truly are being outnumbered. Whites are already a minority in Bradford and Luton and Leicester. They will be in Birmingham too by 2020. 25% of the population in Birmingham is actually from Pakistan or Bangladesh. And it's something, you know, the multicultural mafia just don't want to talk about. They don't want to talk about the problem that whites are now a minority in many of our towns and cities. And actually, is it any wonder that people whose relatives lived here, died here, are actually leaving this place, looking for a new place to call home?
Janice sat down with two fellow MEPs in the European Parliament to get a European perspective on the problems faced in the UK.
What about the cultural side of this? So, you know, basically we're a Judeo-Christian country.
We have a lot of Muslims association rising in Italy, organizing themselves because they are increasing in numbers, so they are able to organize and putting pressure on local administration to have their rights, so to build up mosques, to have money to finance their activities. And we are going to have also in the local administration groups of Muslims organizing for participating in the votes as Muslims association and party. And this is a huge problem.
Aujourd'hui, on voit bien que les nations européennes subissent une immigration qui a un caractère massif et un caractère anarchique. Massif parce que c'est une immigration qui est ininterrompue depuis des décennies, et anarchique parce qu'à aucun moment les pouvoirs publics, c'est le cas en France mais c'est le cas également en Grande-Bretagne, n'ont eu une vraie volonté d'arrêter cette immigration massive dont les conséquences sur notre identité, sur notre sécurité, sur nos libertés, sur notre économie ont été absolument désastreuses. Et évidemment, il y a beaucoup de Françaises et de Français, comme je pense il y a beaucoup de Britanniques qui fuient les endroits où la concentration de personnes immigrées ou d'origine immigrée est telle qu'ils ont le sentiment de ne plus reconnaître leur propre pays.
I hear this over and over. People don't recognise their country anymore. The shops are Arabic, mosques are everywhere, and the first language in many of our schools is no longer English.
Now, you may say, so what, Katy, you utter racist? Not everybody in the UK is white. In fact, when you look at some of the real high achievers that have really contributed to Great Britain over the decades, they come in many shades, not just magnolia.
In the 1800s, Mary Seacole's profile rivalled that of Florence Nightingale. When the Crimean War began, Seacole applied to the British War Office to assist with the wounded, but was denied. So she bravely set up the British Hotel near Balaclava to care for those injured in battle. John Edmondson taught taxidermy to students at Edinburgh University in the 19th century. He regaled his students with accounts of the tropics, which are thought to have inspired Darwin's pivotal trip to the Galapagos and his theory of evolution. And our brilliant Sikh community served with the British Indian Army during the Raj, fought alongside us in World War I and World War II, and now bravely speak out against grooming gangs in the UK.
We founded the Sikh Awareness Society back in 1997 when, through the grapevine, we were getting a lot of cases where young Sikh girls were being groomed. The cases have been increasing. The awareness is kicked in. We first started with the Sikh community, we were helping the Hindu community, we're helping the Buddhist community, we've been in churches, and the only places where we're not allowed in, or we've never been sort of asked to go in, is the madrasas or the mosques. So the MPs and the police, you can see all the reports coming out of Rotherham, the failings of the police, the failings of the local councillors, the failing of the whole system failed, and that's what's been happening for the last 30 years. And it is PC. People are just too afraid to, too afraid to speak the truth.
These great Brits and the hundreds of thousands of migrants working in our NHS, helping care for our elderly, or helping drive British success, evidence the fact that this discussion is not about colour or race. Clearly, diversity can work and help make Britain better. But where is the diversity here?
When you speak to people here, you know, especially the elderly, it's not about skin colour at all. It's not even the fact that they're surrounded by a majority Muslim neighbourhood. And it's certainly not about the cold stacks or demographic facts. For them, it's much more that feeling of isolation, of missing familiar faces that make them feel like they belong.
Leaving a frankly depressing Savile town, I wanted to speak to another isolated community, increasingly the target of hate.
Here in Paris, France, the Jewish community are on the move, victims of a surge in anti-Semitism here, living in the shadows of a rapidly increasing Muslim population. Many feel unable to live openly as Jews, even in their own community. There are huge changes afoot here, barely perceptible to outsiders, but population shifts are underway. Jews are moving out of this city, in fact, out of this country, looking for a new place to call home.
They have no choice. They are targets of Islamists and hate.
صليل الصوارم نشيد الأباء ودرب القتال طريق الحياة فبين اقتحام يبيد الطغاة وكتيم صوت جميل.
Armed with an assault rifle, a submachine gun and 2 pistols, Ahmadi Koulibaly entered this kosher supermarket and started attacking people inside. Ahmadi Koulibaly murdered 4 Jewish hostages right here in this store, held a further 15, demanding that the Charlie Hebdo gunmen not be harmed.
The first of the police officers break in. A body is clearly visible, motionless on the floor. Fire is returned, a shower of bullets from within the shop forcing police to cower. An explosion and a man runs towards the door firing a weapon. It was the gunman.
Ahmadi Koulibaly had pledged his allegiance to the Islamic State of Iraq. He was protesting, he said, the actions of Syria, the interference of Western governments in his lands. And François Hollande came out and described this as one of the worst acts of anti-Semitism in France's recent history. And still today, people come here to place their flowers as a memorial to the 4 Jewish individuals who died and went on to be buried in Israel. And I still feel this is a place where it really shows that you can just be going about your everyday life. You can just be doing your shopping, and you don't know when you are next going to be the victim of an attack here in France simply for being Jewish.
What we are heading for is a Muslim-dominated society that we cannot accept it. And so the Jewish are somehow the sign of what the Western civilization is. If they leave, it's a bad sign.
I notice when I go to Paris or Molenbeek, I go to the European Parliament, I go through Brussels Midi, the station where Eurostar comes in, there are armed guards everywhere. We don't have that in London. We have that around our political institutions, but I have never seen so many armed guards on the continent of Europe. And I personally find that quite worrying. And I had some guests over last week from all over the world, from Canada, Australia, and Europe, and they were shocked at the amount of armed guards, and that really is a reaction to the terrorist attacks we've seen.
Yes, of course. It's after the Zaventem attacks on the airport, and in the metro station, only 300 meters from the European Parliament, severely deadly attacks by homegrown Muslim youngsters coming from Brussels and going to Paris to make attacks over there, to conduct the attacks of Paris.
And this is symptomatic of the open borders and the Schengen system.
Yes, of course, they could travel easily, but also they came from Brussels. Brussels is what Donald Trump called a hellhole, and I'm still supporting him in this. From this angle, it's a hellhole.
Succinctly put, but Gerolf Annemans MEP is not alone in these views. French MEP Nicolas Bay tells Janice about the prison populations of these hellholes.
Cette immigration nous avait été présentée comme comme un bien, comme une richesse, alors qu'on voit bien que, outre ses conséquences sur notre économie avec le chômage de masse, elle a évidemment des conséquences dramatiques sur la sécurité. Parce que quand on regarde la composition des prisons en France, on s'aperçoit qu'il y a 25% de personnes étrangères, mais aussi 40 ou 50% de personnes qui sont d'origine étrangère. Et Jack Lang, qui est l'ancien ministre socialiste de la Culture, reconnaissait qu'il y a environ les 4/5, 80% de la population carcérale, des personnes qui sont en prison en France, qui sont de confession musulmane. Voilà, donc le lien entre cette immigration et l'insécurité, la délinquance, la criminalité et puis le terrorisme islamiste ne sont plus à démontrer.
The link between Islamic terrorism, high crime rate in Paris and the number of Jews forced to leave this city is impossible to ignore.
I'm here in front of the Arc de Triomphe because it seems like the perfect place in the middle of the traffic to tell you about the facts and the stats of French Jews leaving this country, leaving Paris because of the fear they have of being attacked. Now, during the year 2000, attacks here in France against the Jews exploded from 82 to 744, and that coincided with the second uprising in Gaza. Around that time, the number of Jews leaving Paris was kind of around the 2,000 figure. But once again, in 2008, there was the Gaza-Israeli conflict. And so as a result of that, once again, the Jews in Paris were under attack. And you saw this huge uptick in the number of French Jews having to leave this place, needing to find a new home in Israel. That number exploded to close to 3,000 Jews leaving in 2013, and again went right up to 8,000 Jews leaving in 2014. And right now, as things stand, that trajectory is set to continue. One has to ask yourself, while stood in the middle of the most dangerous traffic in the planet, how much longer will there be French Jews living in the heart of Paris?
I got out of the road and went to visit the home of Mireille Noll, an 85-year-old grandma killed for being Jewish.
2018 was a really tough year for the Jewish community here in France, and I think that's why you see this huge hike in the numbers of Jews leaving for Israel or to other places. One of the victims of the spike in anti-Semitic attacks was Mireille Noll, an 85-year-old grandmother who lived just here in this apartment block. It's a government building for people on little or no income. She was stabbed 11 times, and then her apartment set alight in the hope of hiding or disguising what the Muslim attacker had done. One of the surprising things about her death, and I suppose the most shocking thing, is that this was a lady, an 85-year-old lady, who had survived Nazism. She'd actually managed to survive the roundup of the Jews here in France, the Val d'Ivre, where 13,000 Jews were brought to one place and taken to Auschwitz and other camps. It's strange to think, you know, that Mireille Noll, who was killed just for being Jewish, she survived the Val d'Ivre roundup. This memorial is the testament to the people that died there. Yet, having survived the occupation of France, it was a Muslim neighbour that killed her in Paris in 2018.
I went to meet Nadia Ramadna, a French mum and a Muslim woman who runs an organisation preventing children being radicalised by Muslims in France. She was thrown out of a cafe in the suburbs simply for being a woman.
Je lui dis qu'on avait rendez-vous avec une personne. Il m'a dit, attends, c'est un homme ou une femme. Il m'a dit, attendez-le dehors.
Ouais.
Et c'est là qu'il me dit, ici, il n'y a pas de femmes. Ici, on n'est pas à Paris, on est à Sevran. Et moi, ben, je suis restée très correcte. J'aurais dit, écoute, c'est pas grave, on va se faire toute petite dans un coin, et ta cousine. En fin de compte, moi, je ne m'attendais pas à qu'on me dise de l'attendre dans un trottoir. Je m'attendais à des regards, des petites remarques, mais je ne m'attendais pas à qu'on nous vire carrément du café.
Ben voilà, dans ce café, il n'y a pas de mixité. On est à Sevran, on n'est pas à Paris. Et alors?
À Paris, c'est des mentalités différentes, c'est comme au bled.
Refreshingly, Nadia is brave enough to say publicly that we are in trouble.
On a le devoir, aujourd'hui effectivement, on a un problème, on a réislamisé les musulmans dans les quartiers. Effectivement, malheureusement, tous ceux qui ont tué les attentats qu'on a eu depuis Charlie, ils ont tué au nom de l'islam, qu'on le veuille ou non, la réalité elle est là. Je pense qu'en 2019, on ne peut plus parler de musulmans modérés. Ouais. On ne peut plus, ça ne veut plus rien dire, modération, c'est à quel moment on peut savoir si le musulman il est modéré ou pas. Parce que, effectivement, parce qu'aujourd'hui, on voit les attaques que subissent les musulmans, entre guillemets, quand vous dites modérés, ils sont menacés de fachos, d'arabes de service, de vendus. Du coup, à un moment donné, même pour les musulmans, les soi-disant modérés, c'est eux aussi qui se disent modérés qui nous attaquent. Alors, à quel moment c'est qui le musulman modéré? Alors, je pense que c'est nous. Parce que moi, je me rends compte quand même de cette culture. Ouais. Alors, les musulmans modérés, c'est nous. C'est les gens qui, voilà. Parce qu'on se fait attaquer par ces soi-disant musulmans modérés qui disent oui. Et c'est ces gens-là qui nous attaquent. Parce que ce n'est pas vraiment les intégristes. Parce que les intégristes, ils ont une idée, ils avancent. Ils sont en avance par rapport à nous. Ils nous laissent parler. Ils disent voilà, on va les... Mais c'est ces musulmans qui se disent soi-disant modérés qui nous attaquent. Et ces politiques qui se disent soi-disant de gauche, effectivement, qui crée cet amalgame à un moment donné.
I so admire her. She has lost her job, is targeted for speaking out. She can no longer walk freely in parts of Paris, but she says it is her duty to speak out against Islamists in France. Back in Brussels, Janice was looking for a European perspective on these attacks on women and the problems of Islamification of the suburbs.
What about women and girls? We've seen a lot of attacks in Germany and in Sweden and other European countries. Have you had that degree of attacks? I know the rates have gone up.
The same is happening in our biggest cities outskirts. In Milan, in Rome, we had facts and cases related to sexual harassment by migrants to Italian women, and our cities are becoming very dangerous for women that wants just to enjoy the city, go around, walking around, and that is becoming also a problem for men. It's not just a matter of women, but for example, you cannot walk in the central train station in Milan without being scared of being harassed or faced by groups of those migrants just talking there. And the police has not so much power in keeping them away because they have rights, they said, and there is always some NGOs ready to rise up some polemic or everything in order to grant the rights of those people to just going around annoying people in the central station of the city. But this is happening also not only in the outskirts but also in the center of the cities, Milan, Turin, Rome, Naples, wherever. So that's a big problem.
People are cowed, people are afraid, and people are not united. Great Britain is more disunited. It is absolutely divided more than any time in its past, and we are in fact a nation of ghettos. And if we imagine we're united, that we stand strong, that's a lie. All of these hashtags, you know, lights, visuals, candles, making hearts 1 year on from Brussels, that means nothing. Put that stuff away. Don't turn the lights off on the Eiffel Tower. That isn't a solution. We need a solution. We need to protect this country. And for the views of many outside of this liberal city, we are losing the country we loved. I'm off to meet Michael Thoris. He's from the Union Patriotes Français Juifs, and he represents Jews in France that support Marine Le Pen. I'm really interested actually to hear a different perspective and hear what he has to say.
Ils sont effectivement poussés en dehors des quartiers là où ils vivent, et bien souvent, comme ils ne se retrouvent plus, ils ne trouvent plus leur place au sein de la société française, puisqu'il y a une montée importante de l'antisémitisme, qui vient essentiellement de la part des milieux de l'extrême gauche ou de l'islam radical, beaucoup de Français juifs se disent finalement on sera peut-être pas plus mal en Israël, il vaut peut-être mieux partir et aller s'installer vivre en Israël, puisque la France aujourd'hui ne nous permet plus de vivre décemment dans notre pays.
I asked Michael, why does it matter if Jews leave for Israel?
Nous, ce n'est pas ce qu'on prône. On pense, et c'est un discours aussi qu'on tient aujourd'hui au gouvernement israélien, il faut, pour qu'Israël survive, une diaspora. Israël a besoin de garder une diaspora aux États-Unis, une diaspora en Europe. Ouais. Malheureusement, le retour de l'ensemble des Juifs en terre d'Israël sera une véritable gageure pour l'avenir d'Israël, oui, pour la sécurité d'Israël si on n'a plus de diaspora. Et moi, je me bats aujourd'hui pour qu'il y ait une diaspora juive qui puisse rester aujourd'hui en Europe, vivre en Europe.
Ouais. I asked him whether he thinks this exodus of Jews, this Jexodus, will continue.
À marche forcée, oui, il va continuer. Il va continuer puisque malheureusement aujourd'hui, la montée de l'islam radical continue, se poursuit. Il y a de plus en plus d'antisémitisme dans la société française. Il est de plus en plus dur d'être juif en France. Vous ne pouvez plus aujourd'hui porter la kippa sur la voie publique au risque de vous faire agresser. Au risque de vous faire agresser. Donc soit effectivement les Français juifs vont devoir renoncer à leur judaïté et totalement s'assimiler et abandonner toute forme de judaïsme, soit ils vont vouloir rester sur une pratique, une culture juive et à terme ça ne sera plus possible en France malheureusement, donc ils seront amenés à faire le choix de partir en Israël.
There are so many threads to join together in this place. Organisations desperate for Jews to stay in Paris, Islamists wanting them to leave, and ordinary people caught in between the two.
Many Jews here also feel they can't live openly as Jews. Many won't go out with their head covering, for example, because they're frightened that they will be victims themselves. The face of this place is changing. Jews are on the move.
All this Frenchness feels like a facade. The dark truth here is that Islam is gaining ground. Muslims are winning this silent war against French Jews, and fast. Following their stories, I've come to Israel to understand what they've been through in Europe and elsewhere, and what it feels like to start all over again, someplace new. I wanted to start with a voice of authority, so I went to see Yigal Palmore from the Jewish Agency. He works closely with the huge numbers of Jews from Europe and further afield who are pushed out or choosing to leave.
An extraordinary number of people making Aliyah from France over the last 10-15 years. You will be invited to an information session, okay? We invite people to hear about possibilities. Where could I work? In what occupation? Or to study, or to have some professional training. And you need to know all that. You will have rights when you come here as a new Ola.
Alex Zalsky came here as a young boy from the Soviet Union. Overlooking the old city, he explains the importance of the Jewish diaspora.
We Jews, for us it's very important to keep the connection with all the, with all the Jews all over the world, and we have organizations, few organizations that have responsibility on behalf of the State of Israel, like the Jewish Agency and the World Zionist Organization, that connect between the Jews around the world and the State of Israel. So it's very important for us to keep this connection with the Jews. They will remember the tradition, they will, they will remember the connection.
I went to meet Monique and Daniel Kwiatkowski, who fled Paris to escape persecution by an ever-increasing Muslim population.
In July 2014, there were huge demonstrations in France against Israel. During those demonstrations, they didn't shout against Israel at all. The shouts were, "Kill the Jews." Jews, leave France. Your place is no longer here. We live near Paris, and 18 people, Jewish people living there, received letters with threats 18 families.
We will kill you.
We will kill you, or you leave. Can you imagine that next to Paris, you have families that have to leave their homes because the police tells them, we can't do anything for you. They know you are Jewish, move out.
And it isn't just French Jews being targeted. Barry Braun started a new life here from South Africa.
In South Africa, there were many occasions where I had to put my Star of David into my shirt. Firstly, there's 1 million Muslims living in Cape Town. Because they've pushed the division instead of togetherness, where you feel tension wherever you go. Even when you're driving in your car and there's a bus that pulls up next to you and you look in the bus and I wave to the people in the bus, they don't wave back. They look at you as if like, who the hell are you?
Going to the synagogue with one day on Yom Kippur, I passed a cafe in the street and 2 men came out and told me I'm a dirty Jew. Yes, of course.
On a peur de sortir avec, quand il y a les fêtes, quand on sort et qu'on sort de la synagogue, c'est des crachats, c'est des sales juifs. Les enfants, c'est pareil, on les interpelle dans la rue. Et le matin, quand ils arrivent à l'école, il faut qu'ils disent « Maman, on est arrivé à l'école, maman, on est rentré à la maison ». C'est pas évident, c'est pas évident du tout. On n'est pas en sécurité en France. Hein.
Some Israelis, like Rabbi Klein, cannot understand why our countries are sitting back and letting this happen, or worse, leaders who are perpetuating the hate themselves.
United Kingdom, I don't understand what's going on. The people, they have election, they went to wanted, and this, let's say about the Labour Party. How come that this guy could talk like this? I mean, and sometimes, Katy, I ask, they don't have eyes, they don't have hearing, they don't see what's going on around. I would like to sit with the leader of the Labour and to ask him, just tell me straight, what's your problem with the Jewish people? They are wonderful people, they create business, they're working, they study. What do you want from them, except hating?
And I am left wondering, if all these beautiful people can see it, have lived it, are angered by it, why do I feel like such a lonely voice sometimes? Why are people told that what I'm saying is wrong, or simply isn't true, or try to deny it as something that was only said by the right?
Dans tous les pays d'Europe, de toute façon, c'est pas l'Angleterre, c'est pas propre à la France, tous les pays d'Europe, ils sont gangrénés par ça. C'est fini. On ne pourra plus avoir le pouvoir. Enfin, je ne pense pas que l'Europe pourra avoir le pouvoir de refaire autre chose. C'est trop tard. Elle a trop donné.
Et qu'est-ce que c'est la différence entre Paris, France et Israël? Qu'est-ce que c'est le truc qui sont vraiment différents ici?
Alors, ici, pour moi, je suis chez moi.
Voilà, le sourire, immédiatement.
Quelqu'un me dit, je suis d'Algérie, celle algérienne, ça ne me choquerait pas. Parce que je sais que c'est celui parce qu'il est de la même race que moi. En France, on est agressé quand on vous dit ça. Et puis je ne me sens pas en sécurité.
These new Israelis are pioneers in their own way, but there are Jewish communities who live on the front line of Muslim hate. I took a bulletproof bus to Hebron in the West Bank to the tomb of the patriarch to meet Yishai Fleischer.
Now, anti-Semitism, it's a sad phenomenon. And it's happening in Europe because of a layer of anti-Semitism at the top of the elites of French, echelons, certainly British echelons, but also the brute squad is the influx of Islamic immigrants with a jihadist outlook. They are the legitimate wing of the jihad, the liberals. Now Jews feel there's a fire underneath their feet, and so they're leaving, and they're leaving for America, and they're leaving for Canada, and of course we invite them to come here. Today there's 6.5 million Jews.
And soon they're going to be by what, 20 million by?
There'll be 20 million in about 50 years. There you go, okay.
How many?
70 million, 80 million.
Oh, 70 million.
90 million, 100 million.
As I look to return to my family in the UK, I pondered our definition of home with my new friends. What is home?
What is it that's different here? What is this feeling people talk about, this sense of home?
What is unique is the way people behave and the way they feel you, they make you feel you belong here. That's the first thing. They're extremely welcoming.
The first day we came to Israel, it was incredible. I was crying because I never thought that I will say that I feel at home. It wasn't my home. France was my home.
I'm just want to say that if you come, you'll be very welcome back to your home. That's what I heard, and that's what I'm going to say to any Jew that want to come back home. Yeah, that's it. You know, it's tough, it's difficult, it's not easy, but it's good.
I came from Russia, but in Russia we were only one generation, because before that we were in Poland for 700 years, where we came from Spain. I left Soviet Union because I didn't feel at home, because it was anti-Semitism, because I was, reminded all the time that I'm not at home. So I came home.
And you can really feel it here, a real sense of belonging, living without fear, surrounded by faces you recognise and in a community you can trust.
I thank God every day for being here. I'm blessed to be here, and I don't take it for granted. I really don't. And every morning and every Shabbat, when I walk to shul and it's quiet and there's hardly any cars on the road, I realize that I'm home. And when I'm walking back from shul and I hear them saying the Friday night prayers from all the different houses, you know you're home. You can feel that you're home.
And we're building what we understand as a third commonwealth. We're inviting people, we're saying, listen, come join the story, be part of something so amazing. Let's build a country together. Like when you're in America and studying the school books and you see how they, right, you're a pioneer, you're building something. I tell young people in America, I'm like, okay, you might make money in America, but you can help build this story, right?
I find myself gripped by a sudden realisation that unlike these good Jewish people, I have nowhere to run. Brits don't have an Israel.
If I don't feel safe in Europe, to go with my kippah on the street and to afraid that somebody will come and who knows what, it means that nothing changed. Who is in trouble? I am not in a trouble. No. Katy, you are in trouble. And you are in a big trouble because you are not safe and we are much more safely than you. You understand?
I do, and this morning, before I left here, I was specifically talking about this idea that I look around Israel and you can feel it, even as someone who's not a Jew. I feel this sense of belonging, the fact that people feel that they're home, that this is their place. And I got to wondering to myself, okay, but when I need to leave, when my family needs to go, when I want to take my children out, I haven't got a place. And my country, I'm already a minority in many of my cities, and I don't have.
You will come here, I will take care about you, no problem.
It's not necessarily a terror attack because unfortunately it happens everywhere. But when the kid goes to school and you need escort, or Jewish schools that look like barricades, life is sacred than everything else. If your life is a threat, come to a place that your life and your children's life will not be a threat anymore.
Le problème, parce que souvent, moi je parlais à des amies françaises, quand il y a eu les problèmes et tout, je leur ai dit de toute façon, moi un jour ou l'autre je partirai en Israël, et ils me disaient ça, ils me disaient, toi tu as de la chance, tu as un pays, moi je ne sais pas où aller. Et ça c'est très grave, vous vous rendez compte, c'est-à-dire que les pauvres ils ont un pays où ils ne sont pas chez eux. Nous on a encore la possibilité de dire, bon ça ne va pas en France, je vais en Israël, mais eux ils vont où? Et c'est vrai, vous allez où?
C'est une question qui n'ont pas de solution.
Non, non, bien sûr qu'il n'y a pas de solution.
And this lovely couple fear for their grandchildren and know it is not a matter of if, but when they have to come.
We made the move to show them that they can make the move as well. It's possible. It's possible to do it. We know it's more difficult for them than it is for us. But we deeply think there is no future for them in Europe.
We had to do that. We bought an apartment, not for us, for them. If they have to come,
they need to have a place. And we talk with them. They don't want to leave. They're very French, and so are the grandchildren. But Both daughters tell us, we know that we'll have to leave someday, and we might have to do it fast.
If there is hope, it's that at least some politicians seem to be able to see the problem and talk about a solution.
Il faut combattre l'islamisme. Et combattre l'islamisme, eh bien, c'est d'être absolument intraitable avec toutes les formes de revendications communautaires, en finir avec le clientélisme local qui fait que des collectivités locales financent, soutiennent le culte musulman sans aucun contrôle, et souvent ce sont les plus radicaux qui se retrouvent à être les bénéficiaires de cet argent public. Il faut en finir avec cette logique, éradiquer méthodiquement l'islamisme à tous les étages de la société, que ce soit en France, en Grande-Bretagne ou dans les autres pays, dans les autres nations européennes.
On September 1st, 1939, the Nazis invaded Poland, World War II began, and then what led to the Holocaust. But it didn't start on September 1st. It began way before, when synagogues were burned, when Jews' beards were cut
targeted,
off.
they weren't allowed certain jobs, they weren't allowed to live certain places.
It started there. And some Jewish communities in the world should treat every day, when they wake up in the morning, every day, this might be September 1st, 1939. You don't need to wait for that.
You know, we always have in mind this word, which is in Germany before the war, the pessimist ended up having a swimming pool in Hollywood, and the optimist ended up in Auschwitz. And we have this in mind. Being Jewish in Europe now, you can't be optimistic.
At times, Homelands has been an emotionally overwhelming experience. Back here in my home city of London, where whites are a minority, I completely understand how the people of Saviltown feel pushed out from within. I think about the conversations in Paris of Jews called Dirty Jew in the street of the suburbs where the Islamists are in control. And it makes me smile to think of the people in Israel, how they have found their place, but they give this kind of stark warning not to leave it too late, to treat every day like September the 1st, 1939. And I suppose there's one big thought that's remained with me, and it's that we don't have an Israel. I don't have a place to run to. And I wonder,
at this point,